Morning everyone. I hope you guys are all doing well, and today I'll be reading from Romans 12:20. To the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. For by so doing, you will heap burning coals on his head. So, in this passage, we have Paul writing one of his 7 letters to the 7 churches. His first letter is to the church in Rome. And one of the key aspects he talks about in chapter 12 is the attributes of a true Christian, or the marks of a true Christian, if you like to remember it that way. And one of those marks is love and the lack of retaliation of hostile behavior to our enemies. So here, Paul really emphasizes the importance of not giving in to the desires of our flesh, but walking by the Spirit, and treating those who persecute us with kindness in the same way that Jesus did before and while he was being crucified. And why is that? Why should we treat others with kindness? Because that produces God's righteousness. And if we're taught one thing in the Bible, is that God is love, according to 1 John 4:8. It is 1 John 4:8. For some reason, I thought it was going to be 1 Peter 4:8. But anyways, so Paul in verse 21, in the next verse, he says to not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. And the Bible teaches us also that evil, it's not its own thing really. It's just the lack of good. Just like sin is the absence of God, darkness is the absence of light. And hatred is the absence of love. This is what Paul is trying to say here, is that when we will often in life come across hurtful comments, people who say really mean things, they might do things that might make us feel belittled, and instead of God, really, in those moments, he gives us a choice to either give in to our flesh and retaliate, or to walk by the Spirit and treat that hostility with kindness, with hospitality. I'm just reading off my notes. This is also what Jesus talked about in Matthew 5:39, where he talks about turning the other cheek, right? When someone treats us badly, we're not called to treat them in the same way that they treated us, but we are to treat them in the way that we want to be treated, regardless, under all circumstances. We are called to show others the love of God, even if they don't show us that same love. Because at the end of the day, our actions, they're the speakers, they're what will really embrace the love of God. Because words, they can be meaningful, yes, but actions, they speak louder than words. And that's a biblical saying. That's a saying with biblical truth and context. And we also learn that, I've already said this, but God is love, according to 1 John 4:8. And we can show God's love through actions, through responding in kindness instead of rudeness, right? Responding to hostility with hospitality. Is there anything else? So that's just what Paul is saying, feeding our enemies and giving them a drink. That's just representation of us always being nice to others, even if they're not nice to us. So I've written down some ways to apply this word. And the first way I've written down is when we get into heated arguments, it might feel natural to raise our voices and to get angry, to lash out at people. But I have written down here, I will try my best to answer with kindness and patiently instead of raising my voice, because that's something that I've done in the past and I regret it now. I'm convicted of it. The second way is I will not complain when going through trials or take it out on someone. So it's kind of similar, but this second one, it can be more general. It can be more generalized. So anyways, I hope that this message blessed you, and make sure that you send this to someone who you know who might be going through a really tough time. And if you're going through a tough time, then make sure that you leave in the comments and so I can pray for you. And let's spread the gospel together. Let's share God's love to one another as we are all called to do so. God bless.